Hello, everyone. Welcome to another installment of my new interview series where I talk to some of relevant people from Overwatch esports about their team, their situation in tournaments, and what they expect to happen. My guest today is my good friend Chris, who is also the head coach of We Spitfire officially, not for legal reasons, not directly associated with the previous London Spitfire branch, but in many ways quite similar. Now, what I want to ask first, Chris, is a lot of the time when people get the band back together, say music, there's always a few people in the band who don't want to get the band back together and have to really be convinced or dragged through the coals. Did you have difficulty getting the band back together on this occasion, getting everyone to come back?
Originally, it looked like the band was impossible to get together. It felt like Hattie was going to stay Twisted. It looked like we were maybe in our initial conversations, we were considering mixing with the Gladiators. So we would do some sort of roster with Kevin Kai. And then, there was some snaky activity going on through the grapevines. You start to hear about, certain players wanted to play with other players, and the dangerous word Korean got involved. And you genuinely know what it was, no joke. When we did obviously, if you subscribe to the Uncoachable Patreon, for example, we discussed a few weeks ago what we thought was the best European team. And as I was saying it, I realized I actually truly believed that this London roster would be better than a roster with Kevin Kai, both in Europe and internationally. So that little Patreon special, I kind of realized that there's obviously an argument somewhere that if you just sign say you do FunnyAstro, Landon, Kev Kai, that it's pretty hard to touch in Europe. The other teams would struggle. But that team, I think, would struggle more internationally because the parts don't really fit the same way. The Kev Kai want to play a certain style. The Hadi Landon want to play a certain style. Maybe Astro is the same as that. So it kind of occurred to me that actually the most competitive team would be the band plus or minus an Estonian here or there.
So even if, in the hypothetical now, you got infinite money from an org and it was we can sign Kevster if you want, you'd actually still stick with the current selection.
Yeah, maybe it'll come back to bite me when Gumber and Kevster run my fade in grand finals and everyone will say, oh, Chris, you're an idiot. But I do genuinely believe that from a stylistic point of view, especially for international travel, I think that this team will be way more competitive internationally than the one that Kevin Kai has, in my opinion. It can be wrong. I could be wrong.
Talk to me a little bit about Astro then. So for some people who don't know, obviously you and Astro actually have a pretty long-standing relationship. He was actually over at the London house quite a lot last year because Gladiators and London were both in LA. So he's obviously spent a lot of time with the team. What made Astro such an attractive player to add to what is quite an established core?
Yeah, well, obviously he's a long-term friend of mine, since Fusion Season 3, and obviously we're English, so we've done numerous Team UKs and stuff together. I think ultimately that his strength is Lucio. We pretty much always play with Lucio. I think there is an argument that maybe plus or minus Chio, I think he is probably the best Lucio in the world. I think hopefully Astro doesn't kill me for suggesting that Chio might be better than him, but maybe he also can see that side of the argument. I think even when we were on London, there was always this idea that the perfect fit both stylistically and culturally might be Astro to come into our team.
One thing that London have always historically struggled with is integrating new players into the established core. Then is there enough hope that Astro won't be another victim of rejected from the original hive mind? He'll be assimilated into the core.
He'll be the rule breaker. I mean, he's already saying in scrims that he's just being quiet to learn the London way. He says he gets really confused when we're calling that we need to do an Atlanta TP into a chess TP into a jam TP. And he's like, what the fuck are these guys saying? So at least he's kind of approaching it with the right mindset, which is let's just shut up and learn how they do things and then kind of apply my style accordingly.
Do you think his mindset's good? Because in many ways, lots of teams have problems getting players from different teams and putting them together because everyone has a pre-existing, I want to play this way, I want to play a Glads way, a Toronto way, a Dallas way, or whatever. So he's actually been quite open to the London way of playing.
We have to beat the Gladiators way out of him, but we did that on Team UK for a few months, so he's kind of on the road to recovery. I need to stop him from beating these winnable situations, But once we beat those years of coaching out of him from the Gladiators, I think he'll be fine.
The other most maybe controversial is the wrong word, but most difficult of the spots is you've chosen to keep Landon, which obviously suits in terms of style and ability on Baptiste, but one fundamental problem is he is American and will therefore presumably still be American by the time OWCS starts, and therefore be playing from America and on ping throughout everything up until the lands, right?
Sadly, no cure for the American gene. No, but I think, to be honest, we've scrimmed for a few weeks now. The ping seems really okay. Like, it doesn't seem anywhere near as bad as you've maybe imagined.
Was there ever a point where you did consider that maybe someone like Ghost 91 is probably a name that would come to the top of the list of like prioritizing a European player who can compete rather than importing and risking the ping?
I don't know. My feeling somewhere is that I kind of want to make a rivalry with the Gumba team, but I also don't want to like actively shit talk them. But my feeling is that like Ghost is good, but there is a gap, you know. Like, I think that our backline of Astro, Landon on the Lucio Bap is actually the best in the world. And actually, like, we have such a monument. Like, honestly, mate, you know as well as I do, when you like Landon, you know, when we had that like phase where Landon's Kiriko was insane, so we just went like full DPS mode like the next season. Landon's in that mode on BAP now, but it's like totally working. Like, the guy's just like, oh, it's like 3v4. Landon just jumps up to a high ground. Oh yeah, I've just soloed half their team. I'm like, oh, fantastic, you know. So like he's like, yeah, he says he's washed, but he's also like carrying every game. So I think Landon is just unbelievable at that hero.
I think there was something that seemed to click last season with Landon, where he sort of went from a player who had high potential and high peaks, but often a lot of troughs as well if his confidence went, to, especially on Baptiste, he's just got composure now. He's just the guy on Baptiste. He will just put in a performance no matter what.
I think so too. I really think that like the Kev Kai team is good, but I feel like we have like a really, really internationally elite backline. And I think as long as, like, I mean, to be honest, we've been scrimming on the new patch a little bit, trying. Even Landon Zen these days is so good. Like, I really feel like he has like exactly what you said. Like, he's kind of blossomed into the player that we always like knew he could be. And as long as nothing like massively shakes his confidence, or overconfidence maybe is like the biggest danger for him. But I think he is in a position to have like an unbelievable season.
This maybe alludes to the next question a bit, because is there any intention then with this roster to branch out from what most people see as the London identity? Like, is this roster, is the idea just how far can we take a Rhine Sim style of team and style of comp? Or are we branching out? Are we going to be, maybe I won't say the word dive yet, but is there more scope for different comps in this roster now?
We spoke about it. I think we're definitely not locked into Rhine. I think that, like, again, without like coming across overconfident, I think that if you said to us, "Oh, could you have been like the best Ram Brawl team in Europe contenders last season?" I don't think we're like. I think we were extremely good at the Winston Kiriko meta in playoffs. We were very good at Junker Queen meta. Like, actually, there is an idea that the Brawl, we understand Brawl very well and the Brawl heroes, but I don't think it's as simple as that we need to play with a Reinhardt. I think that was just a signature hero that, to be honest, in the meta last season that we were playing it at the end especially, it's the best hero against dive compared to the other tanks, especially for the style that we kind of wanted to play. And yeah, maybe there was an argument somewhere at the end, like Arista or Sigma was slightly more optimal, but Ryan was really, really solidly viable when we were playing him and having success last season. So I think we will probably play Brawl. I think we'll be playing some Lucio comps. I think that's maybe not a surprise. I think that if we've grown up as people where we're no longer going to have like this mentality of, oh, we can play everything, we're just good players. Like, we kind of know what we're good at, but we know that what we are good at, we are good at, if that makes sense.
One of the nice things of picking up a core of players is you know all the strengths you're getting, but it also means if you pick up the same group of players, you're also going to have the same weaknesses that you all had. So do you worry then that some of the limitations are going to make stuff like, once we get to the major and the international competitions, it kind of just depends on the patch, right? And that maybe you're more dependent on that than maybe some teams will be.
Yeah, maybe I'm just delusional, but my feeling was that the last 6 months of last season, I actually think we developed a system and a style that we had never done before. And I actually think teams in Overwatch had never played the way we played. Like, you know, like, we really, really influenced like the Brawl, like this like unbelievably objective focused gameplay, right? And we have confidence, obviously based on stuff that we did last season, that even if there is a dive meta, we know how to beat dive at a pretty effective rate with Rhine. So we feel pretty meta proof, even though we can only play one archetype, you know?
Do you worry that some of what made London do so well against dive last season was that you got to regularly practice against some elite dive teams in Houston and Atlanta, but to hazard a not very skeptical prediction that maybe you won't be playing against so much dive this time around when you're in Europe. Do you worry you won't be able to achieve or replicate that same level of success against dive when you just have to do it on the big stage?
Yeah, so I think the Gumba Kelsa team, I think will play not just World Comps, so I think we'll get good practice there. I think we're going to need to scrim NA teams to get the practice. I think it is a problem, but I think it's one that we already kind of realized that we need to scrim against like NA teams, Toronto or something, maybe, you know.
The other worry might be with a team like this that is everyone's quite comfortable with each other, which is a good thing. But do you worry that because this roster is so comfortable, that complacency will actually, you'll become too comfortable, maybe lazy, maybe not putting the same effort that comes with naturally having to play Atlanta or Florida every week?
100%. It's going to be the biggest challenge for us is to get the mindset correct. Like now where we're no longer the plucky underdogs that we were able to like kind of be for 2 years, there is expectations to kind of win a lot, both like domestically and internationally. You know, a lot of players live at home with their girlfriends, partners, wives, whatever it is now. That obviously affects, like, if you're in the gaming house, you're always grinding because what else are you going to do, you know? But when it'll be the same for me, you know, when my wife gets here, it's going to be like, there is like an element of we have to kind of juggle the personal lives and stuff. I think that the core of players has the right mentality. I think that there is a competitive thing. When we scrimmed against this Gumbo team for the first time, it was unbelievably sweaty because we wanted to win that scrim so badly. And I was sat there like, oh my God, this is so good for us because like this team is going to 100% push us because we really don't want to lose to them and vice versa. So I think having like a really, really strong rival in Europe will help us kind of like keep that fire. And so much of our income these days is because of prize money, right? So if we there's no more guaranteed salaries, or maybe certainly not to the degree that it was in Overwatch League. So it's like, yeah, if we're not working hard, then we don't get paid, then, you know, it's a nice incentive structure.
As it stands right now as well, in some of the regions, you maybe look at America or Korea, and there's a quite clear favorite in the region. You could probably make an argument, are you guys the favorite in Europe? Because Europe itself is way more competitive. When we look at this potential Gumba team, we look at Twisted Minds, we look at the Rock Esports as well. All of a sudden, there's maybe sort of 3, maybe even 4 teams that could all feel like they have a chance to win it.
Yeah, I don't know. Like my feeling somewhere was that like if you'd said to us when we were at our peak, like at the end of last season, if we had to compete against the rosters that are in Europe, that we'd feel really, really confident. But I also think that there was this like, I don't know what the correct word for it is. There was like this like normalization where like the skill levels of we were Overwatch League scrimming, we were scrimming against these like because we obviously scrimmed against like SR Peak Check a lot and stuff last year, and it was like there was an unbelievable gap, right? But as we haven't scrimmed, as they improve their rosters, and as we only kind of play against each other, I feel like the odds of us like climbing like way above them is probably significantly less than if we'd played them last season. But I also think that this roster is genuinely proved a top 6 Overwatch League roster 2 years in a row. And I think that if Toronto had signed a top 6 Overwatch League roster, you'd probably put them favorites. You know, even in Korea, like maybe Korea, like a top 6 roster, you can do better. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like we have to be close, if not the favorites.
You've talked a lot about not just looking to compete domestically as well, but to compete internationally as well. How do you feel you do stack up against North America? Like when Kasura City's AMA, he spoke about Europe and he spoke about we Spitfire London core, and he called you guys toddlers outside of a sort of Rhine brawl meta. Do you think you can? Yeah, toddlers was the word, the adjective applied to the non-brawl Spitfire core. Do you think that's fair? Do you look at this Toronto roster like they're a beatable team, an achievable team? Where's the power level in your head?
Listen, mate, we've beaten rosters twice as strong as Toronto's bunch of what's less than toddlers? Fucking kids, babies, like that absolute shit roster, no problem. Especially with Kasaurus coaching them, you know, like always beat him, so no problem whatsoever. But I mean, they're obviously good. I think realistically, I'm doing like a little Frank Lampard here. No, but seriously, I think they are good. But I also think that like on paper, that roster isn't. Would you say it was better than Atlanta's last season? Would you have said it was better than like half of the Overwatch League rosters last season? You know, like there's some like good players there, but yeah, I don't know. Like that's good, but Florida's roster last year with Gumba coaching it, I think was a different beast as Toronto one, and then Toronto will also have their own problems with like the scrimmages and stuff. So I think we'll beat them.
Okay. Would you say you're more worried about the Gumba team or the Toronto team?
100% the Gumba team. Obviously, Toronto, like, I don't know, there's so many issues. Like, you know how I feel about like mixed rosters and blah, blah, blah. The Toronto team will be good for sure. They'll probably win NA like easily. But Gumba keeps me up at night. You know, that's like, well, that's what keeps me going. Like, I'm sick of competing against fucking Gumba. I hope I can swear on your channel. I'm sick of competing against Gumba because every single second where I'm like, oh, should I just go play some Hearthstone or something? I'm like, well, is Gumba playing Hearthstone? He's not, is he? So get yourself on those VODs right now. So whilst I think he'll push me, I hate competing against Gumba because I know that there's going to be some element of strategy. Like this team is going to be well coached. And I just have to hope he kind of like kills Massa in his sleep or something because he's too old by the time that we play them. But for me, that's it. Like I really think that the Gumba team has got some really, really good players and a really, really good coach. I think we have some really good players and hopefully we have a decent coach. I think that we will push each other actually quite high, whereas Toronto, I don't think will get pushed. And combined with the image of Toronto and how it always finds a way to not succeed when it matters most, I think that like these two European teams are actually gonna look pretty good when it comes to the majors and stuff.
Do you think it's actually potentially a strength for the region, even if it might in some ways make your domestic success a little bit harder? That you'll push both your teams to a higher level than you ever would if you were just in a situation where you were just the big dogs and lapping up the prize money every time.
100%. When I watch a scrim, no offense, like sheer cold or something, I'm like, well, if this is what we're scrimming, we will really not get that much better. When I saw a scrim against Gumba's team, I'm like, okay, these boys are fucking trying. Like, we are really, really trying. I'm like, okay, this is exact. I was saying it as we were losing the scrim. I was like, okay, I really wish we weren't losing. I wish Kevs wasn't typing all of his shit in match chat because, that's, what Kev's like, dude. When he's on the keyboard, the guy's a warrior, In person, not so much. But when he's on the keyboard, he likes to type. But when we were losing that scrim, I was like, fuck, I wish we were winning. But I'm like, I see, you know how Haddy is, right? When Haddy gets the fire when someone like types in match chat, Jamie's like figuring out some way. I'm like, okay, this is so good for us in the long run. Like this, we need to scrim this team as much as possible. And then it just becomes like a tournament match every day against this team. Yeah, and I think that roster is also super. Like Kai and Kev are so good. I think Vestora, if you can get him on the right heroes, is really solid. Like my feeling is that like the backline has some weaknesses, but I also think it's pretty good. So I feel like actually, yeah, in a way, the fact that like Europe has like in theory these two teams, plus you've got Twisted Minds with Quartz and stuff on like who are also super good, right? Like I feel like even if we don't like necessarily like guaranteed first like Toronto would, I think the fact that we have so much strength within our region, it's going to make the teams better.
Do you think then, because the ultimate goal now Falcons have announced their roster, is Falcons have already set out the stall. You said the Toronto roster maybe wasn't better than Atlanta or Florida's or Houston's roster last year. But there's a real argument this Falcons roster might be better than all those teams last year. And they've really set the bar maybe higher than any roster has on paper before in terms of beating them. How much of that is something you're thinking about now, and how achievable is it to stop Nat Goliath?
It probably is the best Overwatch team of all time, right? Like, actually, has there ever been a more stacked team ever? Since like season 2 Shock, maybe. But even then, I feel like this one might be better. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, the thing is, I think the way that we will beat that team is purely off the same reason that like Saudi Arabia and Finland won the World Cup, is like off different meta reads. Like the benefit we will have of playing against Brawl a lot, or of playing Brawl a lot, is that the assumption is that the Koreans will start to play some sort of Zen Brig or like Anna Brig or just some sort of like dive comp, the stuff that they always fall back on, Everyone always jokes about, Europe, you always just play Brawl. And it's true. But Korea is the same naivety about dive that we have about Brawl. It's just the same thing. And that's why those teams went into the World Cup with these unbelievably stacked rosters and lost to teams which you would never assume that they could lose to. If we get similar situations like that, half those players on that team, minus my good friend Smith, can't beat rank comp anyway, as evidence. So are they really going to learn to beat rank comp in Korea? I don't know. I think that if you interview Proper, which I'm guessing might be difficult for you, he will say, we should beat London, but I really don't want to play against them. That's what he'll say.
I guess everything we said that was true about you guys not getting experience against Dive is it's going to be really hard for them to get Rhine or Brawl practice against a lot of these Korean teams as well. So that these international competitions could really just end up being who can adapt and learn the fastest.
I mean, that's it. That's what's really interesting about this year's format is that each team, each region, except maybe minus America, because I feel like they'll just, I don't know, they'll just go with the flow. I really think that like Europe versus Korea, these teams are going to have solid, rigid identities, and it's not going to be just like a pure mechanical battle. Obviously, worth noting that if the patch that we've just had is one that Blizzard doesn't intend to, to reverse at any point, there's a real argument that the meta that we're going into as of recording today, this is a macro meta. This is not a mechanics meta, which I think that suits the European teams and their style a little bit more. So I'm not going to sit here and say the same way that we'll obviously destroy the toddlers at Toronto. I don't think we'll necessarily beat Falcons with the same confidence, but I also don't think it's like as said and done that Falcons will win no matter what.
It's always hard as well to predict the future of patches, but is your initial impression that this is almost as good a patch as London could get in terms of the type of game style Blizzard seemed to be pointing towards or trying to move the game towards?
You remember when we were in 2 years, every patch we just coped. We read it. Oh, this is a Ryan patch for sure. No matter they would like take 100 HP from Ryan in it. The London house would be like, this is a Ryan patch actually. When you really think about it, but in theory, like when you looked at it too, this has to be the best Ryan patch ever. Do you know how many scrims when we're playing against like Kai and Kev? 70% of the fights we lose is because Kai charges a rail and headshots someone at the start of the fight or as we're pushing in. The ability to not get one shot by anything is so good because, especially if you play a style where maybe all you want to do is stand on the bloody point, it's so much easier to get to the point if no one can get their head blown off, you know? And then we start to whittle them down. Yeah, my feeling is I think Zen got massively buffed this patch. I think he is probably like the single biggest success story of it. But I think in terms of comp archetypes, if you're trying to play Zen, what's the other hit scan? I don't know if you can play Hanzo anymore. I don't know if you can play Sojin anymore. Tracer's maybe okay, but if you've seen these hitboxes, if everything just smacks Tracer in the face, then maybe she's also not strong enough. There is probably questions in terms of the other heroes that you play around it, unless maybe Farah just becomes like giga broken, then that is potentially a problem.
Thank you very much for all of this. I think the sky certainly seems, or the future seems bright for London. Is there anything you want to say? Because obviously you've probably actually taken a lot of fans with you from Overwatch League as well with this core of players. Anything you want to say to old fans and new fans about the expectations and what you're going to look to do this season?
Yeah, so obviously I talk a big game, but I think that the important thing for us and what we will try to do is kind of represent the same values that we had last year, you know, like this kind of play to our style, you know, play the game in a specific way. And I think that if you enjoyed watching Spitfire over the last few seasons, then I think that, you know, this new group will attempt to do all of the same things that we did before. So if you were a fan, then stick around. I think it'll be okay.
More of the same.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.